Call the meeting of the special city council meeting to order for today. It is September 23rd, 2019 at 5:30. And before we get going this afternoon, I do want to once again ask anyone with any electronic devices to go ahead and silence those or put them on vibrate. And also a reminder that this being a special city council meeting, that we can only address issues that are on our agenda this evening and nothing more. With that, roll call, please.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Quadrigula.
Here.
Straight.
Here.
Wolski.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 on our agenda this afternoon is the Ordinance 5419, the adoption of the 2020 annual budget on second reading. The recommendation, the City Council passed the Ordinance 5419 on the second reading, including the resolution establishing the 2020 rates, fees, and charges pertaining to the Minot International Airport, sanitation, and bus.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Alderman Pittner, second by Alderman Janser. Discussion on the motion. Yes, Alderman Quadrigula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to make 3 brief comments. I probably didn't raise my hand quickly enough last time or the time before, but I wanted to say some things for the record and for the public and for us. First comment I wanted to make is I wanted to publicly compliment and praise Council President Mark Janser. This is the second year in a row that he has issued a Council President's letter and alternative, in a sense, to the budget. And it was, I think, well written. It was almost statesmanlike in its tone. And he didn't propose anything different, which I think is very noteworthy. I think it's the first time I remember that happening in 2 straight years. So I wanted to compliment Mark on his role in presenting his take on it. That leads to the second comment I want to make. And I think, in a sense, the idea of a council president's message has become superfluous. And that's because the council has taken a much more active role in crafting the budget for many, many months. And I wanted to compliment specifically the president, the vice president to the extent she's been involved, the mayor, and the city manager, especially the city manager. We've been involved in the budget process for 4 or 5 months now, since April or May even. There have been numerous meetings, lengthy meetings. These have been public. City staff have been involved, department heads have been involved. We've listened to staff. Staff have listened to us, and I think that's very important to know. I think in the past, the council has often been accused of being just a rubber stamp on the budget. We've also had a process where the budget has kind of appeared out of nowhere in September. Then with a few minutes' notice, the council president has given us his or her input and suggestions on it, and we've been forced to act on it. And that's not the case here. It is our budget, and I think that's part of the reason that the process is, from my point of view, has gone so well. And in some senses, I think the president's budget message has become superfluous because it's been our budget all along. It's been the public's budget. And I think that's a very important thing for the public to know and for the fellow aldermen to know. I've served on this council on and off since 1998, and I think this is the best process I've ever seen. The most open process, the most debated about process, and we've come together. This is the council's budget. This is the city's budget. It's not the city manager's budget or the council president's budget anymore, and that's a huge thing, and I think it's a positive thing. And the third thing I wanted to say about the budget, last time we met, Alderman Wolski presented some suggestions, and I didn't agree with them, and the council didn't either. But I forgot to, and I needed to, and I wanted to, and I want to now praise Alderman Wolski for the way in which he presented those suggestions about economic development. They didn't win, like I say, much support, if any support, but they were well-reasoned. They were well-written, very well-written, in fact. It was very clear why he was proposing what he was proposing. And from my point of view, again, from a historical perspective, I can't recall an alderman or woman in the past presenting such a positive and well-rounded proposal. So although I disagreed with it and voted against it, it was very nice to see that level of thinking, analysis, and that quality rationale. And I hope that's a model for us in the future, whether we're council president or a council member, in terms of presenting suggestions and presenting input. So I wanted to say those 3 things, and I think, again, this process I'm very pleased with, and I will strongly support the budget as it comes out. But I think, again, there's a difference between the outcome, the content of a budget, and the process. And I think the process is what I'm focusing on, and I think the process has been better than I've ever seen it before, and I needed to say that.
Thank you, Alderman Quadrigula. Any further discussion on the motion for approval? Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, thank you. Alderman Padragula, thank you for those comments. I also am going to be brief here with a few thoughts. I did propose some amendments to the budget last week and ended up opposing the budget in the final vote, but not because of how those particular amendments fared. I think my opposition to this budget would have probably been in place even regardless of the outcome of those particular amendments. But as the comments I want to include tonight, one is a sort of a brief note for the council and staff for something I believe we need to address. It's going back to our landfill discussion last year. As a part of that discussion, there was a motion made by Alderman Padragula that was ultimately supported by the council to begin budgeting for the landfill relocation process and the site consulting in the 2020 year budget. My conversations with Mr. Lakefield suggested that that particular item did not make the 2020 budget. But I think whether it's through a budget amendment or dollars that are in the budget in some form already, I think it's important that we see that process taken up in the next budget year. And so I just wanted to call attention to that tonight. The other elements I wanted to call attention to were page 3. We have our regular employees line, and this is sort of the aggregate line of all the large category spending in the city. And at first blush, it looks really, really good. It says we've had a dollar change of about $332,000 against a $26 million total spend, about a 1.28% increase. A little further digging on that part helped me figure out what was going on, and it's the fact that our recreation and auditorium salaries have been removed from that line. And if we add those back in, the number we see there is closer to 3.8% in terms of the growth in our regular salaries. I bring it up because that particular number concerns me. That's about an 18-and-a-half-year doubling period. That is a rate of growth that is a little above inflation, and I'm not suggesting that I have any faults with our employees or that we want to be punitive with the way we operate our employee salaries or anything like that. I just look at that number and it gives me cause for pause and concern, because if we were to do that on an ongoing basis, I think the cost of this government accelerates at a rate that is beyond what the taxpayers can bear. As a couple final points, one of the reasons I'm not supporting this particular budget is because, though I think we have made some pretty significant progress on the economic development front, what I see in this budget is in many ways a return to what we were doing a couple years ago. It was the process of a couple years ago that I think gave rise to some of the initial conversations that brought forth the IEDC report. I think that was very valuable work, and I would frankly like to see the council be a little more aggressive in terms of appropriating dollars towards the outcomes and goals set forth in that particular report. I completely appreciate the council's will on this particular topic. I would simply count myself as one who wants to go further, faster, and would be a little more authoritative, I guess, with those dollars towards that end. As a final comment, one of our primary priorities in this year's budget was keeping our tax rate flat. Our second budget priority was keeping costs under control. We've got the yin and yang right there. We've got two sides of the same coin. They don't always play exactly to each other. And I think if I were to reverse those priorities for next year, I would be a whole lot happier. The tax rate, keeping that particular flat is, I think it obscures the transparency of some elements of the budget. And I think I would rather be working in terms of real dollars rather than tax rates. So with that, I welcome a vote on the 2020 budget.
Further discussion on the motion? Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess for my 2 cents, I'm going to be supportive of the budget tonight, and it's not that I disagree with some of the points that Mr. Wolski makes. I appreciate that discussion, and I hearken back to whether it's the retaining wall discussion around City Hall here, some of the other things that we have some very heated discussions up here, and it's about our perspective on priorities and how we represent the public. Everybody has a different understanding, I think, of how they go about that. I will say, Mr. Mayor and City Manager Barry, Alderman Walski's points about some of the pay plan increases and things moving forward. I hope that it's an incentive for the staff to know that we support you, but I think that we also want to have a better working relationship with staff as it pertains to this budget. I can appreciate Alderman Padragula's points that staff and the council, and in particular you, Mr. Mayor, and probably Council President Janser have been more involved maybe than some of us, but I think the public would very much want to have a larger say and be more involved, just to have a better understanding of why and how some of these decisions are made. I'm going to support it tonight because I think we've hashed out a couple of the issues in particular, but the one thing moving forward, Mr. Mayor and City Manager Barry, I think that the public and the council in general deserves a discussion about Hub City funding dollars, a discussion again about the reason I brought up the NAS piece moving forward is there are many people in this community that feel community facility dollars should be, we should figure out a way to have that and reallocate those because those dollars come back to the community. So I think in the days and months ahead, I would appreciate, Mr. Mayor, if you and the city manager would just keep that in mind, because I think that those are topics that the public really wants to hear from us, and too often I feel like we don't. So I'm supportive of the budget tonight, sir. I'm going to support it. Yeah, I have concerns, but ultimately I think we've hashed those out, and I want us to move forward.
Further discussion on the budget?
It's a quick step.
Is there anything that we need correcting on there, Mr. Jonason?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I could, just on one of Alderman Walski's points, we do have $350,000 in our landfill contract items to continue the, I guess, the expansion, or to look at different locations for the landfill expansion. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion? Kelly, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
No.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to item number 4 on our agenda this afternoon. This is the Ballantyne Settlement, eminent domain. On May 31st, 2017, the city filed eminent domain action against several property owners to acquire property for the construction of the flood control project and related infrastructure. The defendant filed an answer, and a court trial was held on January 14th, 2019, with the issue being whether the defendant's property was necessary to fulfill the public purpose of flood control. The court entered an order on February 28th, 2019, authorizing the city to acquire fee simple title to the subject property, and a jury trial to determine the value of the property was scheduled for September 17th and 18th of 2019. On the morning of the trial, the attorney representing the Ballantyne submitted the following settlement offer articulated above the city to the city for its consideration. The city staff recommends that the city accept the tentative agreement reached property owners and their attorney, which is the following. 1, agree to the purchase of the portion of the Ballantyne property necessary for construction of the flood protection project for the amount of $48,000. Number 2, property owner will petition the district court for reimbursement for reasonable attorney fees and costs. And 3, possession of property to be promptly transferred to the city to allow construction of the necessary flood control project. Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the proposed settlement with items 1 through 3 that you read.
Motion by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Merchant, this is not a public hearing unless you do have some other information, as I was understanding that the court has made the settlement here and we are to move forward on the actions that are before us this evening.
Understood. The only item is the concern is how this is drafted out. Number 3 is the counterproposal by the city. We're still under the same terms of the agreement. It's just that number 3 was as a counter to number 1 and number 2. So number 1, 2, and 3 have all been accepted by the parties, and
Okay. So our attorney is indicating it's not changing anything, and we're able to move forward without any interruption. Thank you. Discussion from the council on the motion. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion is approved. That takes us to number 5 on our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjournment. Motion by Alderman Pittner.
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.
Thanks for showing.